It's such a joy and honor to be with you all tonight. Like I recognize that time is a very sacred resource, and the fact that you chose to share this sacred resource of your time with me here tonight means a lot to me. So I just want you to know that I recognize that, and I hold that in my heart from moment one. So my hope and my goal, my commitment here tonight is to share things in the only way I know how, which is being me. Sometimes brilliant, sometimes pathetic, and sometimes in between. But my heart's desire when I come and I do events is that I want to do what I can to serve whoever chooses to share sacred resource of time in a way that when we leave here, all of us, myself included, leave here more inspired, more motivated, more lit up to have our lives be a positive contribution to the world that we're part of. That's the reason why I do events, because I know that our world is hurting pretty badly, our planet is hurting pretty badly, and what it needs is people who are willing to hold the space of that pain and bring their most fierce, loving, committed, compassionate self to that pain and help heal it. And that's why I do events. People know me as a public person now, but I remind people that I am an introvert. And the way you know that is I lived in a tree for 2 years. And they forget that part because they've heard me do events or they've seen me all over the place and they think, oh, she's this public person. They forget that I accidentally became well known while living in a tree in the middle of nowhere by myself for 2 years. Part of the reason I did that and could do that is because I'm an introvert. So in many ways, living in that tree was more my true nature than doing public events are. And so I get nervous every single time. I've literally done thousands of events at this point, and even ones like this where I know it's a safe space and it's going to feel like family vibe, I still freak out. Like it takes a while for my heart to calm down, my stomach to calm down, my lungs to expand and breathe deeply. So by the time I'm done with the beginning, it should calm down and I should be completely present. But that is why I actually do events, even though it's hard for me. I do events because I know that there's something powerful when we share the authenticity of our stories and share the authenticity of ourselves. That I don't think we have enough of that in our world today. It's so much about the surface of things. It's so much about the appearance of things. And in certain ways, my action falls into that category. We like big. We like breaking records. We like all those kinds of things. And so we're drawn to that. And so in some ways, the action I did is something that grabs attention in a world where so much is going on all the time, that we need things that kind of grab our attention. But for me, the power of my story is just that I was and still continue to be a regular human being who found a courage to do something bigger than I knew myself to be by allowing myself to fall in love. To fall in love with the tree, to fall in love with the forest, through that to fall in love with the world, and through that process to learn how to embrace having my heart broken over and over and over again, which was not who I knew myself to be as a young girl. And so I think that for me is a big part of why I share my story, because my hope is when people see that I'm just another we, that collectively we all look inside of ourselves, and again I include myself in that, and say, well, what can I do? Where else can I grow in my service? Where is an edge that I've been afraid to explore that I might now be inspired to explore? So that's what brings me here this evening. Does anyone want to share what brings you here this evening? I love putting people on the spot, to be fair. Yes.
Well, I saw you when you had just come down out of the tree. In Malibu, California, and you were inspiring then, and I'm sure you're going to be inspiring now.
No pressure. Thank you. Anyone else?
I read your book, The Legacy of Luna, and it was just the most heartwarming, amazing story. And then I have you have another book, like an ecological book.
One makes a difference?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I'm free to visit my studio that I practice yoga. It's just amazing.
Oh, nice.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lillian.
Thank you, Ralph.
Exactly, right?
Ralph.
Well, that's the beauty of community, right? We have the people who can help hold the space, we have the people who can help run the space, we have the people who can help fill the space and keep it alive. Like, I remind people that even though I'm most famous for my action, it took an incredible team who made sacrifice on a daily basis for that tree sit to become a success, for me to be able to tell the story I'm able to tell. And that's crucial when we think about the difference we want to make in the world, is number one, recognizing that each and every one of us are powerful beyond our mind, because the mind limits us. And also, we're even more powerful when we come together in community and we find ways to bring ourselves together like a puzzle, where we each fit the pieces of one another. So that example right there is a perfect example of what we need in our world, where everyone sees where their place in the puzzle is and fits it. And together we make beautiful community, make a beautiful world. Thank you. There was someone over here.
It was me.
Okay.
I'm a little shy. No, but I've been, feeling a little defeated, I think. So I'm here for inspiration, and I've read a lot about you, and want to start the year off on a good foot. So.
I'm sure. Thank you for being shy and being courageous enough to share. Especially sharing the honesty of feeling defeated. It's, I think it's something that a lot of us, myself included, are facing. It's something I face a lot. People are usually amazed when they hear that, because a lot of what I share is so joy-filled, so love-filled, so we can do this filled. But the reality is, I tell people, the reality is I'm probably one of the biggest cynics on the planet. I just don't happen to let it stop me. So I'll be happy to share somehow it's worked for me tonight, in hopes that maybe it'll help clean the mirror, the haze of mirror that's on the mirror of your soul right now. That's the pain. The pain is a little bit of a haze. And maybe the sharing tonight will help you clear some of that haze so you can see for yourself a way to move forward, even in the face of feeling defeated and hurt and overwhelmed. So thank you for the honesty of that.
I feel the same. I feel what's happened with the storm and then with the shooting. And my wanting to come back to yoga and to the community of yoga, it all just kind of fit together when I saw that you were talking, because as I told you, I read your book, and you've always been incredibly inspirational, because you weren't doing it for yourself. You were doing it for something so much greater and bigger. And I think the more we can put our hearts out there in an open way and not close them out of fear, even if it's just a little step at a time, it's just a beautiful way, I think, to spend 2 hours of my life.
Okay, thank you. And maybe one more, because I saw another hand over here. Oh, over here. Well, that's an important hand right there. Sorry, I didn't see that.
No, the Dalai Lama says it's not enough to be compassionate, you have to act. And so I feel full of compassion, but an inability to really put that compassion, give that compassion feet and wheels and a motor. And I feel like I have 2 small children, grade elementary school level, similar to Sandy Hook, and when that event happened, I wasn't thinking about guns, I wasn't thinking about divisiveness, I was thinking about mental health, and how, people's mental health is like the tree to you, to me, people's ability to not want to kill 20 innocent children. And so if there was something I could glean from tonight of how to take that compassion and do something with it to affect that kind of change in people's desperate minds, then that would be awesome.
That's great. That's a perfect lead-in. And the reason I say it's a perfect lead-in is because so often people come up to me and tell me, "Thank you, Julia, for living in that tree. I never could have done that." And then I remind them, well, neither could have I. On December 10th, 1997, when I was standing at the base of that tree looking up, if you had told me what was about to happen, I first would have laughed, because that's my nature, and then I would have screamed, and then I would have run in the other direction. Because who I knew myself to be at that time was not the girl I'd become, the person I'd become. And what that has taught me is that there is a symbolic tree for each and every one of us. And in our lives, it's oftentimes more than just one tree. Just like the tree was my tree, and now the speaking is my tree. I've had many different forms of trees, but what symbolically a tree means is what is it in your life that can call you and cause you to be bigger than you know yourself to be. And that in that space, there is at least one, if not more than one tree for many of us. In some ways, having children will do that. And in our world today, even that, if you choose to have children, it's even a bigger calling to act, doing everything you can to make the world that they've been brought into to be a safer and healthier place for them. And so it's perfect that it sounds like you're beginning to almost coalesce on a way that you can give action to your compassion in a way that's deeply meaningful to you right now around mental health. And that's there for all of us. Hi, welcome. A lot of times people will come up to me after an event and say, I'm so inspired, great, now what do I do? And I always respond to that question with another question, which is, what do you love to do? Offer that. Because there are so many things that are hurting so deeply that need our help, that basically if you close your eyes and spin and you open your eyes, any direction you're pointing in, you're going to be pointing at something that's wrong in the world today. So there's no shortage of work to be done. The other experience I've had in doing so much direct action as well, and working with people involved in direct action, is it's so easy to burn out. And our world and our children's future do not need us to burn out. They need us to be healthy. Because if we want a healthy world, we need to model a healthy world. So when we find a way to offer what we love to our hurting world, it's also something that can sustain us when it gets hard, when it gets defeating, when we hit obstacles, when we hit failure. Because if you choose to play big, failure is part of the game. You don't fail if you're playing safe. I'm known for very successful action. I've done so many since. A lot of people don't know about. I have not won them all. There are some we have lost. When I've given, and everyone has given everything they had, we still lost. But when you offer what you love to the work, it allows for at least the flame to not completely go out. It might go down to an ember, but it doesn't go out because that love sustains that ember even in the face of complete breakdown, heartbreak, feeling overwhelmed and at a loss. The talk for tonight is spiritual activation, and I came to this idea through a couple of avenues, and one was there started being this theme, I don't remember how many years ago now, but it was in all the media, and it ties into the Dalai quote, and it was, can consciousness change the world? And it was this great big conversation that was on the front of like Yoga Journal and every kind of like enlightened magazine out there, or even like, I think even Time magazine covered it at one point. It was just like the meme of that year. And I was getting a little frustrated because I was one of the people that was like, hello, consciousness is important, but consciousness without action will not change the world. Like, yes, prayer and meditation and awareness is important, but if you don't put that into service in the world, it's not going to make the difference. It's just not. It's not going to help the people who are starving. It's not going to help the people who are getting bombed. It's not going to help the elders who don't have a system to care for our elders anymore. It's not anything we care about. It's not going to help them. You might know that they need help. You might help others know that they need help, but unless you help, the need is still there. And I came up with this idea of spiritual activation because after that meme happened, then spiritual activism became a meme. But even that concerned me because when we hear the word activism, kind of like when we hear any word that ends in ism now, it is something that separates us. There are certain people who are whatever that ism is. And I think we created activism, feminism, sexism, racism. I think we created these words as a way to try and understand something, but we've reached a point in our human evolution where those words have now become something that disconnects us. For instance, when we hear the word activism, we think it's for a very particular group of people, usually people like me who are tree huggers or lock down the bulldozers or those kinds of things. But the reality is that every single time we make a choice, we're changing the world. Every time, not just spiritually, but scientifically. because no choice happens in a vacuum. It is actually scientifically impossible to have no impact. It's actually impossible to make no difference. Even choosing to do nothing makes a difference. And so I came with this idea for spiritual activation because it was like, how can we get it out of the realm of activism is just for certain people, and recognizing that every moment of every day we're making a choice, and that that choice has an impact. And if we activate spirit consciousness in every choice, how might that change the way we behave? So that instead of just operating so oftentimes on robot mode, which is what we kind of start to do after a while, we get busy. There's all these systems that are already in place in our society that oftentimes support bad choices, unhealthy choices, destructive habits. And they're so ingrained in our everyday practice that we don't even notice it until there's something that interrupts the message and has us take notice. And for me, that's what spiritual activation is about. It's a mindfulness bell that interrupts the message, that has me look at every little choice I'm making and ask myself, is this in alignment with my vision of the world or is it not? Not with judgment, but with love. It's part of the reason why I love yoga as a practice. It's given me tools on how to look at integrity without judgment. If you're in a yoga pose, you might be stretching really deeply. A yoga teacher might pull you a little bit out of the stretch because your integrity, the foundation of the pose isn't solid. They'd rather you be in a solid foundation in integrous pose, and from there see where you can stretch. It's kind of like a tree. If its roots aren't in nice and deep, grows too big, it's going to topple over. And so this idea of spiritual activation and the tools like the ones we can get in yoga or meditation, they allow us to look at things like integrity without judgment. And what that means is when we hear the word integrity, we oftentimes think judgment or moral or something like that. But integrity shares the same root word as integral. All it means is something connected or is it not? So for me, this idea of spiritual activation became a practice of looking at how can I activate spirit consciousness? How can I activate the consciousness of oneness? How can I activate the love through every single choice, every moment of every day, without judgment, so that when I act out of integrity with my vision for the world, I'm more likely to get back in integrity a lot quicker than if I judge myself or others. Part of how this idea came to me, pardon me while I take a water break. Part of how this idea came to me was actually early on in the tree sit when I had one of my first major ahas. I was on my solar-powered phone talking to activists on the ground who were in a room gathered around a speakerphone, and we were trying to plan an action. And there were different ideas on how to do that action, which is oftentimes the case. As people, we are diverse. We are a species just like any other one. The planet is full of diversity. It's actually important. But wouldn't you know it, some people, especially like in the environmental movement, they kick and stomp and scream and demand diversity in the forest or on the planet, but then we start demanding a monoculture of the movement. We should all agree with this theory. We should all agree with this action. And if you don't, well, watch out. And this conversation got so heated so fast. And part of it is in direct action. People are really worn thin. People are working very hard with very little resources. And we all know that the more tired we are, the less healthy we've been eating, the less we've been taking care of ourselves, the more likely it is that we're going to be dysfunctional in a quick period of time. And so we were trying to plan this action, and all of our unhealthiness and dysfunction started rising very fast. And I was just listening even in the tone in people's voices, how destructive that conversation was. And you have to remember, I was very naive at this point because I had never been an activist before. I didn't really, barely even had a sense of what activism was. I ended up getting involved in the lunar tree sit because I wanted to do something to help the redwoods. I had no activist experience, but I grew up with two brothers, no sisters, very poor, traveling on the road, playing outside in trees all the time. So when I heard that sitting in a tree was something I could do, being an introvert, I can do that, sign me up. So I really, when this thing happened in this conversation, I was really still in that phase of being very naive and very young to the movement. Like, I can sit in a tree by myself, sign me up. And then all of a sudden there's all these politics involved and intensity involved. And after I hung up the phone from that conversation, I felt so devastated that I started climbing around and I was just sobbing. And I was just like so heartbroken and so feeling defeated. And as I climbed around the tree, I could see for miles in every direction. So I could see both beautiful ancient forests and then mass swaths of desecrated land where it literally looks like a bomb has been dropped off, where they clear cut the forest, then they light it on fire with diesel fuel or napalm. And so when it's done, it literally is as if a bomb went off and looks like it. And as I was climbing around and sobbing, all of a sudden what I was looking at just really penetrated deeply into my psyche. And I had this realization that how in the world did we think we were going to stop clear-cutting a forest if we were so effective at clear-cutting one another? And in that moment, I dropped in even deeper and I had a new aha for myself, which was all the wounds on the planet and in our world are a direct result of the wounds that are within us first. That everything we see externally is a mirror, a microscope into what's going on in here. We have wounds within ourselves and then we act it out on the earth and we act it out on one another. It doesn't exist out there randomly. It is literally showing us what's going on inside of ourselves. So in that moment I realized that although I was definitely in the tree for the forest because I love them, not only do we need them, they're just something that touches my soul about forests and that defies description, that I will always do my best to protect. But I knew in that moment that not only was I there in that tree for the trees and for the forest, I realized that I was there for a deeper cause. I realized in that moment that every single issue in the world, every one of them is a symptom of a disease, and the disease is the disease of disconnect. 100% of the time. Any issue that stirs your heart and your soul, anything that really calls you, every issue is a symptom. And the disease is the disease of disconnect. When we feel disconnected from the earth, we can make choices that destroy it. Even if we think we care about the earth, there's all these ways we've inherited the disease of disconnect and make choices that harm the very same thing we care about. Sometimes that's how diseases work. It takes a while for us to recognize they're there. A disease of disconnect from people allows us to drop bombs on people and call them a statistic, instead of realizing they're human beings. Or sometimes manifest without our awareness, where we make choices that cause harm to other people through something that we buy, where we don't even recognize it. But that's how diseases sometimes work, subtly. So in that moment, I realized that my work was going to be about trying to be what I now tell people when they say, well, what do you call yourself? And I'm like, I've never been good at boxes or defining myself. But if I have to say what I am, I just tell people I'm practicing to be a holistic health practitioner. And that's what I want to be. That I want to help advocate for, lead by example for, and partner with others for holistic health for our entire planetary family. That's what it is I'm driven by. And I got the aha in that moment from that conversation that was at first so destructive, which I'm now grateful for because it helped lead me to a lesson I deeply needed that has informed so much of the work that I've done in that tree and since. Taking care of the personal ecology. Taking care of the personal ecology is also crucial in doing the work for the world. And sometimes when we receive blessings and we see a community that we care about suffering and struggling so hard, it's sometimes hard to feel okay at self-care. And we have a privilege that we're even in this room together tonight. Like just acknowledging the privilege of, compared to what many people are going through in the world right now, we have a profound privilege to be in this space together tonight. And sometimes it's hard when we feel suffering on a deep level to also be able to hold space for the privileges, the blessings in our life, to do things like take care of ourselves. Tools like yoga and meditation I found to be crucial, but whatever tools work for you to help care for the personal ecology. Again, it also ties back to integrity. If we want a healthy world, we can't get there in unhealthy ways. We might have momentary band-aids that look like success. But if we really get that underneath it all is the disease of disconnect, then we have to look at, if I want a healthy world, how am I connected to that in my life and how am I not? Being involved in direct action took me numerous iterations to begin to really own that piece. That taking care of my personal ecology is crucial to the work I can do in the world. Yoga helps me a lot because I have been on the front lines of activism, not only during the tree, but since, in times that have been incredibly challenging. I've had guns pulled on my face, I've been thrown in prison in a country that didn't speak the language. I mean, all kinds of amazing, intense experiences I've had since coming down from the tree. And even though I've done so much work on myself, in very intense moments, I am an animal. I'm a human animal, but I'm an animal, and I get triggered. And when I get triggered, I go into my animalistic response of fight, flight, or freeze. Practices like yoga allow my body to hold the wisdom that my head knows, so that when my head is triggered, I can more quickly tap into that wisdom I know. And it's been phenomenally helpful for me, and I'm so grateful I've committed to taking care of personal ecology in ways like yoga and meditation, because it has helped me not only maintain my personal ecology, but has also helped me tremendously in the work. Let's see, what else wants to come through? I'm going to open it up to you all soon to ask or share whatever's coming through, so you get to help guide the conversation tonight, so prepare yourselves. A lot of times I heard early on the tree say, "You're so much like Gandhi, you're so much like Gandhi." And I'd heard about Gandhi, but I didn't really know that much. And it was funny because when I first got involved in the direct action movement in Northern California, I kept hearing about this commitment to nonviolence and these nonviolence trainings, but the people who were leading the trainings were annoying the crap out of me. And it seemed like whenever we would have counsel and try and form affinity groups and come to a consensus, all it was whoever was loudest and meanest won. So my introduction into nonviolence and the Gandhian methodology was not very positive for me. But I knew that Gandhi himself was very, very powerful and positive, but I just didn't know that much. And I was really struggling with even the term nonviolence, because I am fascinated by the way words work. And I thought, why are we using two negative words to describe a very positive movement? And why are we choosing to define ourselves by what we are against instead of what we are for? And then one of the things I realized is that in any form of activist movement, any form of service in the world, we have to be so careful, because we get so good at defining what we are against that what we are against begins to define us, which is exactly what I experienced happening that day on the phone call, that we had become people who chainsawed each other to try and stop the chainsawing of the forest. And so I started asking for people to send me information on Gandhi and the origins of the nonviolent movement. And I had many, many books that were sent, and I read them all voraciously, and I came to this synthesis of the nonviolence or ahimsa movement in a way that has been core to everything I've practiced since. And what I read a few different paragraphs in a few different books, one by Gandhi himself and a couple other by other people who had been with him. And I distilled it down, and Gandhi even spoke to his challenge at trying to translate the ahimsa into the English language. But what I found out in the distillation of it is that ahimsa, the origin of the nonviolence movement, more honestly means to live so fully and presently in love that there is no room for anything else to exist. And every time I say that, I get goosebumps, because it is such a call to conscious living that I cannot even describe it to people. But when we really drop in, to be nonviolent is such a less call to our highest selves than to live so fully and presently in love that there is no room for anything else to exist. It's like a fire can only exist with oxygen. It means we fill our space up with so much love that hatred can no longer exist. Violence can no longer exist. Enemies can no longer exist. And that is the most profound call to action I've ever come to in my life. It is also the hardest taskmaster I've ever taken on, because I'm a very human being, and there are some moments where I jokingly but honestly tell people there's some moments where I can think of a whole lot of four-letter words and love is not at the top of the list. There are times and I'm just like, I don't want to love right now. No, I'm not making love. Anything but that. And there are moments when I fall out of that commitment, but that commitment has been very, very powerful in continuously calling and causing me to be bigger than I know myself to be. It really has. And it also has me ask with every choice, would love make this choice? And it really creates a whole new lens and reframe for life. Because otherwise what ends up happening is what I call the granolier than thou. You know? It's like, well, do you do this? Well, I do this. Well, I don't know. You know, like that whole thing. And that really, what I find is when people engage in that process, they usually end up burning out and stop doing half to 3/4 of what they were doing. Because when it's a judgment conversation or it's a to-do list, all of us have to-do lists, and I'm pretty sure all of us have things that have fallen off our to-do list, right? Like, to-do lists just aren't inspiring. We create them because we have to or we need to, but they're not necessarily motivating or inspiring. We just do it to keep track of things and try and make sure we get at least most of it done. But when we're talking about living in integrity with our vision of the world, we don't want that to be a to-do list. We don't want that to be unmotivating. We don't want that to be a should conversation or a judgment conversation. What we want is for every choice to be an automatic manifestation and reflection of our love for the world and the planet of which we're a part. It's so much more inspiring way to live. And so in my life, I ask myself, what would love choose in this moment? In every single choice. And I talk about it in the everyday things, in every conversation, again, not to try and judge people or make people feel wrong, but because everyday choices are the integrity. I tell people, you know, if you're going to build a house and you have a budget, and you find out if you've planned your whole house that you're $50,000 over budget, the one place you're not going to ask somebody to skimp is the foundation. Right? Like if you got the budget for your dream home, you're going to change some doorknobs or some light fixtures, you're not going to ask them to skimp on the foundation. Why? Because you know the rest of the house is dependent on that. So our everyday choices are the foundation of creating the world we want to live in. And so for me, it's absolutely vital that we have the most integrity we can in the foundation. Again, not as a judgment conversation, but as a, that's how committed we are to having the world we want to live in. And so for me, that's things like paper towels, paper napkins, paper plates, paper cups, plastic to-go containers, plastic lids, plastic cups, plastic bags. How long you leave the lights on, if you have energy efficient lights, how long you let the water run. All those little things that are like the things we've all heard 1,000 times. I feel part of the reason more of us don't really practice that is because it became to-do list. Instead of recognizing that, what would it be like if every time you chose to use a paper cup or a paper towel or a paper napkin, you had to go listen to a tree get cut down like I did? How might that choice change? Every time you use a plastic to-go container, a plastic lid, plastic cup, if you had to go walk in unlined oil pits in the middle of Ecuador and visit communities that have cancer that have never had it there before, how might the choice change? Love gives us the connection to the choice to make us realize that there's a thread that leads before the choice and a thread that leads after the choice that connects us in a very deep and profound way. And we live in a society where we're so disconnected that we say we're going to throw something away. There's a way. Right? I've been saying this for years because it's the one thing that helps all of us get, myself included, how the disease of disconnect has snuck its way into all of our lives and the way it's working on a very subtle level. But when we can recognize that subtle and begin to reclaim the daily choices, then we have a really solid foundation with which to ask for the world to make bigger changes. Because if we want the world to make bigger changes, but we're not looking at where we might need to shift our lives, there's a little bit of a lack of integrity. Bless you, bless you, bless you.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't apologize. I'm just like, I don't want to say bless you every time, but I'm just feeling you over there. So I'm like, bless you for that and many other reasons. I can't.
I don't mean to punctuate your
no, it's fine.
talk with an illustration of everything you're talking about.
No, it's perfect. I didn't feel interrupted. I just felt the moment to just bless you. So bless you 1,000 times. Yeah, so anyway, that's my sharing for now. That again, that for me, if we can look at what would love have me do, what would love have me think, what would love have me say? How can I live my life as a space so filled with love that there is no room for anything else to exist? And I think I'll share one more story to illustrate it, and that's not in the book. That might also just help even give it like more roots than just a concept. So while I was in the tree, it was deer hunting season. I had been up in the tree for about a year. And deer hunting season, loggers are allowed through the gates onto the forest land to hunt deer. And this particular day, they decided it would be easier to hunt the girl in the tree than to hunt deer because they were rip-roaring drunk. And they knew where I was, and I was a sitting target, unlike a deer. So I'm sitting in the tree, minding my own business, and this truck pulls up, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, blam, 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 bullets start ricocheting. And I, again, like I said before, like a lot of four-letter words came to my mind, and love was at the top of it, right? Because I'm a human animal, I have my trigger, and that was a trigger. And fight, flight, or freeze mentality hit hard, but I knew that that was not going to get me anywhere because they had guns. So I had to figure out another way of being. So I did the first practice that we learn in yoga and meditation that is also extremely powerfully, physiologically and scientifically as well, called taking a deep breath. Because our little control center of our fight, flight, freeze, or transform, our little control center for that is right at the base of our lungs. So when we take a deep mindful breath, it actually tells the control center that it can chill out for a second. You might still need to run. You might choose to run, but you're going to choose it consciously from the present versus reacting from your past and fleeing, right? So you might still make a similar choice. It's just breathing deeply literally gives us the physiological opportunity to choose from the present moment. Welcome. So I have these guys shooting at me. I'm not thinking love right away, but then I took a deep breath, and the breath said, Julia, you know you're committed to love. You got to chill out. Just go with this. And so I did, took deep, deep breath. And then I employed one of the next tools I had learned while I was in the tree, which is that the humor is really, really, really powerful tool. And I've gotten made fun of my whole life. Since before the tree, during the tree, and after the tree. And before the tree, it used to upset me. Now I'm at the point where I'm like, I lived in a tree by myself for 2 years. That's pretty damn funny. And because I was by myself and I was oftentimes the only material, I'm better at making fun of me than you will ever be. So give it a try. So I knew that humor was one of my tools in the toolbox. And then the other tool in the toolbox is to ask questions and to actually care about the answer. Because I think most of us, have you ever had that experience where somebody asked you a question and you know they didn't give a damn about the answer, they were doing it to look good or whatever, and you feel kind of slimed afterwards, you wish they wouldn't have asked at all? So I learned early on in the tree sit too, and another powerful tool in the toolbox is to ask a question and care about the answer. So I decided to employ those tools, and when they were done shooting at me, I yelled down to them, do you feel better? And they yelled up to me, what? And I said, well, I know that when I'm frustrated or angry, there's nothing like a good venting to make me feel better. And after a venting like that, you guys must feel great. And you have to understand, I'm 18 stories up, right? So I can't exactly see or hear what they're saying or doing. And I hear them mumbling amongst themselves, but I'm not clear what it was. And then they yell up to me, you are, fill in the blank with a bunch of cuss words, crazy. And I yell down to them, I have been in a tree for nearly a year, and you're just now figuring out that I'm nuts. It took me long enough. I still laugh, just because it makes me laugh, right? And then that turned into them putting the guns down, thankfully. And they came up to a clearing on the logging road, which was directly across from my platform so that I could see them and they could see me. And we started to talk. More like yell, because it was a little ways away. I did have walkie-talkies. I was not going to send one down to them. So they went to the clearing across the road, and we began to talk. And this conversation unfolded. And then I employed another tool I learned while up there, that so often we get identified to our issues that when we start interacting with people who identify in a different way to the issues, we become issues identifying with issues, and then when an issue comes up, we're surprised that we don't make any headway, right? When we're no longer connected. We're just issues creating issues, triggering each other's issues. So I knew that the best way to start a conversation with them was not to talk politics. So I was like asking them questions like, are you married? Do you have children? At one point I said, what do you like to do when you're not shooting at girls who live in trees? And we just chatted and eventually got into a little bit more about, well, what is it like to work for Maxam Corporation? I asked them, I said, it used to be Pacific Lumber. You guys were taken much better care of when it was Pacific Lumber. What's it like to work for Maxam? Again, just still trying to make it really human. And eventually they started asking about me. So I told them things like, the one question I always got, and I still get to this day, what do you eat up there? And so I told them, you know, I'm a joyous vegan. I love to be a joyous vegan because it means I can make a lighter ecological footprint on the planet, as well as not take the life of an animal unnecessarily. I told them I like to eat organic because I prefer not to fill my body or the planet with pesticides. So that's what I ate up here. My ground support brings me organic food and vegan food and fruits and vegetables and grains. And so we chatted for a while about those kinds of things, and I don't exactly know how long the conversation went on because I didn't have a watch, I wasn't keeping track, but it was a long time. And finally they felt complete. They said, all right, Butterfly, we're gonna go. We're sorry for shooting at you. No problem, you might want to apologize to the trees because I think you hurt them more than me. And then they laughingly asked, I guess you're not going to tell us which way the deer went, are you? No. And that would have been a great end of the story if that's all it was. But then about 2.5 weeks later, two and a half weeks later or so, somebody starts yelling at me about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I tell people that my rule is after 10, I will be enlightened and transformed. Before 10, I'm completely unresponsible for my behavior. I am so unenlightened and transformed before I've had my cup of tea and I've gotten used to the day. So 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, I am not at my best. And I hear, butterfly, butterfly. And I was just like, just ignore them and they'll go away. Just ignore them and they'll go away. And butterfly! They wouldn't stop. So finally I leaned my head over the platform and yelled down, what do you want? And I was thinking in my mind, you know, I'm just so used to people giving me a hard time and coming up there to give me a hard time. I was like, if they're going to pick on me, can't they pick a reasonable hour of the morning to pick on me? Is that too much to ask for? So I was like, what do you want? And they said, you remember us? We were the guys shooting at you a couple of weeks ago. Oh, I forgot. Thanks for that. And they said, we brought you food and supplies, but our supervisor's on the way up. If you don't hurry up and lower down your bag, we're going to get caught. Now you have to realize that in this moment, I have to really drop in because my food bag is attached to my lifeline. So if I send down my food bag, I'm sending down my lifeline. I have to drop in and think, did I really connect with these men? And I knew in my heart, I knew in my soul, we had made a real connection. So I chose to drop my bag down. It's 18 stories below, lots of branches in the way. I cannot see what they are doing. I'm just holding their rope so that I can feel when they're done. And I feel a little tug, and they yell up, all right, butterfly, we're done, take care, be safe. They're gone. I get my food and supplies hand over hand. I pull a bag hand over hand up 18 stories, so it takes a minute to get resupplied. So I finally get the food to the bag to the top of the platform. I opened it up. It was filled to the top with organic fruits and vegetables. Organic fruits and vegetables. These guys went somewhere they never even shop to get me organic fruits and vegetables. And the reason why I share that story is, will it happen every time? Of course not. But can it happen if we're not choosing to come from a place of love? Choosing to come from a place of connection, even in an experience that can be very disconnecting. It cannot happen in those moments. So part of the reason I share this story over and over again is not so that people are like, yeah, yay, Julie Butterfly, but to remind myself about the power of dropping in deeply to that love, oneness connection, especially when I don't want to, especially when it's difficult. That therein is where the miracles can happen. Only in those places can the magic happen. And I've learned from that experience and many more that it is possible if we choose to live so fully and presently in love that there's no room for anything else to exist. So hopefully that story gives it some roots. And now I'd love to open it up to you to share, ask whatever's alive for you so that this can become more of a conversation style if that feels good for people. If not, I got a whole lot more stories I can share. Oh, here we go, yes.
I have a completely crass question, which is how do you make a living?
Thank you for asking that. it's a reality. Financial realities are part of what we deal with. It's interesting. When I made the most money, I had a nonprofit that I was responsible for, so almost everything I made went into that nonprofit, and now I make a lot less. And so it's an interesting journey for me on how to earn right livelihood. So events like this are part of how I earn my livelihood. About 60% of my work is pro bono. So I book, anytime I have a paid opportunity, I book a whole lot of my pro bono volunteer work around it, because the paid opportunities help cover my basic expenses. My main form of income I earn from being a guest presenter or workshop facilitator at universities and conferences. But that's usually only about 4 months out of the year, and I have to figure out how to make it work the rest of the year. Another interesting thing that I consciously chose to do in my life was, many years ago, I sued 3 corporations for stealing my image and using it to sell a product. And I told them I was going to give all the money away, and I had pro bono lawyers who chose to be pro bono because I was going to give all the money to nonprofit organizations. So I told them, you might want to settle with me out of court, and you might want to settle well. And I told them I prefer not to go to court because I don't believe we have a justice system, and I prefer not to support that system. And I said, but you better do right by me, because if you don't, I will sue you, because I'm not afraid to take you on. So they were dummies, and they listened to their lawyers who get paid by the hour regardless of if they win or not. And their lawyers got paid, I found out their lowest level lawyer was paid $750 an hour. Their highest paid lawyer was $1,500 an hour. So their lawyers had it in their best interest to drag this thing out, right? My lawyers were pro bono. So they came back to me with an offer that was so low it was beyond insulting. And I laughed, and I was like, okay, I guess you want to go to court. And so then they eventually settled out of court after they had lost so much money. The company that had the product ended up going out of business. But I also sued an advertising agency that created the ad for them, and AT&T, because they were the wireless provider for this product. And they were all just like, ugh. And so they chose to settle out of court, but about 6 months before I settled, I found out that the IRS wanted what was approximately 33% of the settlement, even though I was giving it all away, because they see a settlement as personal income, which is ridiculous, because really settlement means you've been wronged, you got taken down to here. A settlement means you're being brought back to right. So technically they shouldn't have an access to any of that. You're just having your life made right again. But they wanted 33% of this. This was right as we were beating the battle cry under Bush Jr. to head to Iraq after September 11th. And I knew where that money was going to go. And I knew, like the minute I go there, the tears start to come, because I knew we were going to see pictures of innocent people blown to bits. And I knew we were going to hear horrors and atrocities that would rip my soul out. And I said, I cannot give that money at this time. I will not do it. And the tax liability of my lawsuit settlement at that point, after the best attorneys and lawyers and everything whittled it down as much as they could, it was going to be $175,000. I was like, I can't give $175,000 right now. I know what's about to happen. So I sent in my tax forms, but I said I'm choosing to redirect my taxes because I know what you're going to do with them. And I said I actually believe in taxes because I believe anytime we do anything together, it can be made better. So if taxes were being used to make our world a better place, I would be giving more than my share. It's my nature. I'd be giving you a bonus if our taxes were going where they belong. But you're choosing to use your taxes for very violent and destructive things, not only against people, but also against the planet. And it goes against my morals, it goes against my beliefs, it goes against the core of who I am to give this money to you. So instead I am going to pay my taxes, but I'm going to pay them where they belong. And when you, the IRS, start choosing to pay them where they belong, I'll be happily contributing to you again. That was over 10 years ago now. And now with penalties and fees and interest at over $450,000. And what the resulting impact of that choice is that I can't actually be on contract anywhere. I can't be on a paycheck anywhere. I can't do any of that, or the IRS will take everything that's above living wage. And so as a result of that, not only do I not make a lot of money, I have to be creative in the ways I earn it, because otherwise the IRS will take it. And I would rather earn less and contribute more positively to the world than be on a salary somewhere or be earning a larger contract deal somewhere, but then have the IRS take over 75% of it and use it for things that I don't believe in. So that's how I earn my income, and I also earn some income as well. Some people are really, they're very grateful for the pro bono work that I do, and some people just make donations because they feel like, okay, if they make a donation to me, it's going to go help this cause, this cause, this cause, and this cause, so their dollar's going to stretch further. So that's also, I've been blessed with donations over time that have been able to support the work that I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, because it's a reality. I mean, it's actually a question a lot of people face when they start looking at, well, I want to step up my service, but I'm also like struggling with paying my bills. It's a reality. It's not really crass. It's just an honest truth of how do we do what we believe in the world and also earn some kind of right livelihood so that we can take care of ourselves and the people that we're close to. So thank you. Yeah.
You must be asked to participate in so many causes. How do you, how do you make a decision as which one would go first or which one to decline?
Well, in the beginning, I pretty much said yes to everything. But as a result, I averaged 250 events a year for 7 years. And wore myself flat out. And so then I got to this place where I recognized, and again, this is a powerful lesson for us in our everyday lives, but also if we want to step up our commitment in the world, is that a clear, conscious, and powerful no to one thing is a clear, conscious, and powerful yes to something else. Because we oftentimes feel bad for saying no. Or we say no unconsciously, but then we end up filling that space with something that doesn't really serve us either. So when we are clear and conscious and directed about why we're choosing to say no, it's because we're clear that that is going to free us to say yes to something else. So now, mostly I have some ongoing groups that I've helped start, or I was their coach in the beginning to help them launch, things like that, that I have an ongoing working relationship with. Also, when I tour universities, I always bring in local nonprofit groups, should they want to come. And they table at my events, and I don't just have them table. If they choose to come and table at my events, I get to know who they are. I talk about them from stage. I get people inspired to go by their tables, sign up, get involved, etc. So that's one of the ways I'm able to help, even just by being on tour. And then also when I'm on tour, if I hear of something that's happening in that area that I have a way to contribute while I'm there, it might be a fundraiser where I do the pitch. I love being the cheerleader for nonprofit organizations. I love being the one who gets up there and asks people for money. Like, I love it. I have no issues about it because I like to get what I call green energy money. It's like where you plant it, it will grow. To get some green energy planted in the things I believe in, yeah, put me up there, let me cheer. And so a lot of times I end up doing that for nonprofits. Or if there's many times that I've gone where there's a direct action happening and helped with the direct action, helped get media, helped get community there. So those are, like, I do it those ways, but basically the way I choose now is, number one, is there already some pre-existing relationship, whether it's they're working with someone I've met before or it's a group that I've worked with before, or does it tie in effectively somehow with where I'm already going to be and what I'm already doing, so that it's not me rerouting my life constantly for all the requests. Does that answer the question? Yeah.